Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the TagoIO webinar series 2025. We have a great one for you today. I'm very excited about this one. Before we get started, though, a couple things. You'll notice that there's a chat, and I see that Philippe has already put a message in chat. Please use the chat if you have any questions at all during this webinar. We'll try to address them in real time, but if not, we reserve some time at the end for Q&A. So feel free to do that. Today we're talking about enterprise-grade IoT, configuring your custom TagoDeploy instance, right? I'm going to tell you what TagoDeploy is. My partner, lead developer, Victor Lima, is here. I am David Hall, Customer Success Manager. Apologies if I didn't mention that. He's going to go into actually showing you a live demo of TagoDeploy and what it is. It's fairly new in our software suite. So it's really exciting to have this webinar and share this information with you. So we're very excited about it. We already have some customers on TagoDeploy and they're reaping the benefits of it. And again, I'll explain what it is, as that's the first item on the agenda. And deploying TagoIO instance and services. We'll speak about scaling up and best practices. We'll go into cost and billing a little bit more, but if you need more information on any of these topics or any topic regarding Tago, not just TagoDeploy, but Tago in general, please reach out to your customer success manager, right? My partners, Tiago, Alex, and myself, we can really help expedite any information that you need, questions you may have. We're really available for any reason that you may need us. So take advantage of your customer success manager. I can't stress that enough. But we're going to be also talking about how to get registered. And then, as I mentioned, a Q&A at the end. But please feel free to ask any questions that you like. During the webinar, we'll try to get to them in real time. So what is TagoDeploy, right? So when you think of TagoDeploy is a dedicated private instance of the TagoIO platform. It provides complete isolation and administrative control that shared environments just can't deliver, frankly. We remove the necessary limitations imposed in the multi-tenant, the traditional TagoIO platform. So with TagoDeploy, you can set your request per minute, your RPMs, mutable bucket size, number of tags, and more. On the multi-tenant, you cannot do that. So that's what I'm saying, and we'll get into this a little more. Like today, if you needed more tags, because there's a limit on tags that your account has. On the multi-tenant, you are blocked from adding more tags unless you contact your customer success manager and we see if it makes sense for us to increase that. On TagoDeploy, you have the freedom to increase those things that you don't have access to today. TagoDeploy has all the powerful features of TagoIO with dedicated resources tailored for your business. You can create custom dashboards just as you can in traditional multi-tenant Tago, perform real-time data visualization, run custom analysis in a fully isolated, secure environment. But Tago Run is fully integrated, so you can also deploy custom white label applications to your customers, manage permissions, build tailored user experiences really effortlessly. It's very easy to use. It is hosted on AWS, our AWS. The solution ensures scalability, security, reliability, because you're not on the multi-tenant. You also control your own backups. Again, Victor will get into this a little more. You could decide if there's an update to the TagoIO platform itself. You can decide if you want to take that update or not. On multi-tenant, you don't have that, that control. So really, if you think about the traditional multi-tenant TagoIO infrastructure, you are removed from that, right? I'll speak a little more at the end, but there is a process to coming on to TagoDeploy if you're already a TagoIO multi-tenant customer. It's not a big process. You just need to work with your CSM through that, but it's fairly easy. Myself, as a customer success manager here, I've migrated 3 customers already over to TagoDeploy, and it's been some time. They're loving it, the isolation and basically what they can do there. So what I really want you to get out of this is the benefits of TagoDeploy and how it can be used in your environment, right? So it's really important. Again, I'm very excited for this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass it over to Victor to walk you through the TagoDeploy admin itself. But with that, again, feel free to ask any questions in chat. We'll try to get to them in real time. So with that, Victor, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, David. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm going to be showing you a hands-on on how TagoDeploy works and how can you deploy your first project. So let me start by sharing my screen here. So David gave us a very good introduction on how TagoDeploy works. And you may be thinking now if that is something that works for you. So once you have your account on the TagoDeploy, and by the way, you can go to tago.io/deploy and press deploy your first project, and it's going to take you to TagoDeploy page where you can start from here. And the first screen you're going to see is this one, where you have message regards to new versions or releases from the TagoDeploy, and you have your projects. So the project is the first thing you are going to interact. You probably won't have known. Let me log in again here. Just a minute. Yeah. So the project, the first thing you're going to see, I already have one here, but let me show you what a project is. So as David did mention earlier, TagoDeploy will allow you to deploy a dedicated instance of TagoIO, which means you are going to have your own admin, your own API endpoint, and basically AWS services, your own database that is tailored for your application, and you have control on how you want to scale and how much you are going to spend on these services. So you can give it a name, and you have multiple regions that you can deploy. And this is very good in a sense that because of legislation, you may be forced to deploy your instance on a given region for for a specific customer or for your company. So we do support all the regions from AWS. And you also have the version that you want to deploy. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about versions inside the project, how you update the version. This is a manual action that you do. You are not forced to update your TagoDeploy instance only when you feel ready to do so. So when you click Launch Project, you are going to have your base costs explained to you, and you can agree and confirm. So this gives you just a basic introduction of what you are going to pay for deploying this project and how much this is going to cost you by month. So this is not a fixed cost, right? You have the flat fee from TagoIO. You have recurring infrastructure, but you also are going to pay directly AWS costs here. So different from TagoIO, and I think I should bring the TagoIO pricing here. So different from TagoIO, where you have your costs based on data input, transactions, output, and storage. On TagoDeploy, you are going to pay for your database usage, in-memory database usage, API instance directly from AWS. So if you are not using much, you are not paying.
Yeah, one thing to add there, Victor, if I may. Very good points. So you still pay Tago, but you have much more of a granular control over what your costs are. Because what Victor was showing on the TagoIO pricing page is when you're on multi-tenant, if you increase 1 million data points to the next tier, which I believe is 5 or 10 million, and let's say you only need 3 million, right? Well, you can't do that on traditional multi-tenant Tago. On TagoDeploy, you can be very granular and say, you know what? I don't want 10 million. I want 2.5 million or whatever. So for all the services, it's very granular in what you control. So overall, your cost as you scale is much lower than being on the multi-tenant. Yeah. Sorry, Victor, I just wanted to add that.
And it's valid to mention that on the multi-tenant, we charge you by the data input, right? So how much data you are sending, and not directly what AWS is charging for the amount of data you are sending. So very important to understand this, because when you send data, the amount of information in kbyte size of your body structure of how much data you are sending in a single request has different costs. We are very transparent, as you are going to see on our billing page for the TagoDeploy, on how this all these different costs are being charged from you. So once you deploy your projects, I'm not going to deploy because it's going to take about 50 minutes. We don't have this time. So I already have a project here deployed. So let me go to manage. And this is the screen you're going to see for your projects. As you can see, I have a log here that just explain to me everything had been successfully deployed. If I get any error, like for example, 1 day ago, when I was trying to do some changes, I got an error here, and you're going to see exactly why the problem is happening, and you can take your actions. And it's very important to mention that any modification to the services down below, I'm going to show you, is going to generate a new deploy. So what you can do once you have the TagoDeploy, so I want to start here from the domains, so you can have a good understanding on how TagoDeploy works. So TagoDeploy is going to give you an API endpoint of your own to access your instance, and a admin of your own. So TagoDeploy, this platform, TagoDeploy, only manage your instances, and if you want to use Tago, you need to access this admin or use these API endpoints, and it's going to work very similar to what you have on Tago. So you still have all the features, devices, entities, files, everything works the same, but of course, you won't have any billing management. None of that is going to be available here. Everything that is billing related is going to be on your TagoDeploy platform. And from here, you still have profiles. As you can see, I can add more profiles. I can share profile with other people. So everything else works very much the same. Also, you still have connectors and networks. But I think it's worth to mention that when you first deploy your project, you are not going to see any network available and none of the decoders. So we give you a very clean instance, so you can do whatever you want, right? If you don't want to have all this noise here, it's your choice. But if you want to have, you can go to system here, and you will see you can sync the decoders with our public decoder folder, repository in this case. So we make this optional, so you have the control, and also we do update these open source decoders, right? So if you can see here, 3 weeks ago, we did update a few decoders. So maybe we understand that for enterprise users, they want to have control over when things are updated. They want to make sure that none of its features breaks or its applications. So basically, we're giving you the control when you update connectors, and same thing with version here. So when we release a new API version or TagoIO version, you are going to have the option here to update this version. You are not forced to do so. You only update when you feel confident about the new version. So TagoDeploy also comes with control over all its features. So here we have a extensive list of all the features that is going to cost you to run, and most of them comes disabled by default, so we don't charge you, and you have the option to disable other ones. And a good example are all the actions. So the way TagoIO is designed is that each one of these actions are microservices. So having them enabled is going to basically drain your AWS costs month by month. So if I press edit here, I have the option to enable and disable whatever type of action I'm not using. And as we release more actions in the future, it's going to automatically appear here when you update your version of the API. And by the way, if you are heavily using one specific action, this makes a lot of sense when you have action based on data received by sensors. And of course, you have sensors sending data each minute or something like that. You may want to scale the specific action microservice if you start receiving any problem or you see issues in the metrics for that specific service. So how do someone create an account on TagoIO? So you have collaborators, and you can invite collaborators for the TagoDeploy in this case, which means you can have other people of your company access to the TagoDeploy platform, and doing so, having access to manage the domains, do new deployments, everything else here. So we call this feature collaborators. And if you want to create accounts for your TagoIO instance, you have accounts here. So you can create an account for someone of for your developers or other people of our company that is going to be accessing the admin or using the API for manage the application. So that said, I want to talk a little bit about the services. So one of the major features of the TagoDeploy is giving you the control over how you scale your application and add metrics on Our application is working. Let me take a little bit of water here for just a minute.
While you're doing that, one note here is if you're an existing customer working with your CSM and an assigned developer, we'll look at your multi-tenant application and come up with best practices. So you don't need to guess here on what, how much CPU you need, how much memory you need. It's pretty standard, quite honestly. And once we set those, and this is standard, what you're looking at, almost all customers are going to run just fine under this configuration. But we might have an instance where we're looking, and maybe you have a very large multi-tenant application. We might recommend that these be bumped up. So you're not fully responsible, but you have full control over it, is just what I would like to say.
Yeah, so the first instance, and I think one of the most important ones, is the API. So it's going to come configured much like this way, with one single machine, one minimum instance and two maximum instances. And by the way, this setup is going to allow you to prototype even going to production with basically no problem, maybe using thousands of devices. But of course, I don't know what you're doing, right? It's just guessing. But on our internal tests, this should be enough for most of the customers, around 1,000 devices. And the first thing you want to do for scaling is increasing our number of instances. By the way, our recommendation for productions is at least 2 minimum instances. So if if something happens to one instance, you have the other to get it covered. And you have here the monitoring, so you can check how your instances are dealing. For example, you have CPU utilization. And what you're probably going to see here are spikes, right? Because unless you have devices sending data each minute throughout the day, what is most likely to happen is that you have data coming in during an hour of the day and getting you a spike because you have data coming in and analysis running and things hitting API endpoints everywhere. I need a minute here, David, to get water.
Yeah, not a problem. So as you can see already in this webinar of the benefits of having a secure single tenant instance that you have full control over. Again, this is for customers that are going to scale or are scaling in real time. So again, as I said, you're always going to hear me say this when I speak. You need to contact your CSM to get more information of anything Tago, not just TagoDeploy. But I think what we've learned so far is just the freedom that you have, right? And that you're not bound to multi-tenant, let's say there's downtime. Although we've been 99.9 for, I don't know, last 2 years or something like that. We haven't had any downtime on the multi-tenant. But again, you're not affected by that. But there's much more benefits to TagoDeploy than just that, right? Being at the mercy of the multi-tenant. But that is a benefit. Also with TagoDeploy, think about this on the projects, right? You might have 2 different customers and 2 separate verticals, right? Think of them like profiles. This is how I think of them, is you might have somebody in agriculture and you create a project for them there. And you add collaborators to that for developers to work on that agriculture application. But then you have collaborators that can access TagoDeploy, but then also you want them to be able to obviously develop on the platform itself. You can do that. Then you can have another one for asset tracking. So lots of freedom that you have here.
Thank you, David. I'm back. Sorry, I'm a very quiet person, so speaking that much is heavy on me. So you're going to see spike probably on your API usage. And the last one I want to give here about the API or recommendation, I would say, is that you are going to prototype with probably one instance, but when you go to production, you are going to use 2 instances. And if in the future you start to see lots of spikes on CPU utilization, you probably want to scale on the instance number. But if you are getting lots of memory utilization, you may want to upgrade the machine. Okay, so next one I want to talk about is the database. So database is another important feature that you are going to want to monitor on your AWS usage. So it's going to come set up like this. So very small machine, no additional Redder instances. And from here, you can also control your backup retention period and backup schedule, which is very important for disaster recovery, right? And you also have the metrics here for like CPU utilization, freeable memory or cache memory, I would say, because this is going to be used for cache. Number of database connections, so you can see which time of the day you are getting most database connections from your APIs instances. Read and write and network output. So all this is here for giving you information. Probably if you have just a small number of devices, as I did mention, around 1,000 devices, this hardware is going to be a problem for you. But as soon as you start to scale, have peak of data come in on specific moments of the day, you are going to want to start scaling your database. So reader instance is going to be for when you are accessing a lot of stored data, and you may want to scale the machine when you are writing a lot of data. By the way, we are going to add a lot of documentation for this page. I'm going to show you how documentation works on the MQTT in a few moments. But you are going to have all these information available through this page here. Then we have the in-memory database. So TagoIO works with a lot of queues, which means when you send data to Tago, this data goes to a queue, and the API starts to consume this queue throughout time. And this is just for data. Of course, we have a queue for actions. We have queue for analysis. So a lot of queues, and we call this in-memory database. So you may want to scale your queues if you are getting a lot of spikes. Again, you have the option to scale for the readers or the machine, depending on which kind of problems you are seeing here on your statistics page. And lastly, you have the analysis runtime. So if you are using the analysis feature, you have only the option here to limit the memory. So you have the limit for Python, the limit for Node.js. So this is only here to work as a guardrail. So of course, as more memory you use in your analysis, higher will be the cost of the analysis runtime. So maybe you want to limit this to 100 megabytes. So you add some kind of guardrail depending on what you're doing. Okay, so that covers all the services. But we also have some add-on services here. So you may have been wondering how all these meters, how that all the networks work. So from here, you can deploy any of TagoIO middleware. So again, all these middlewares work as a microservice. So it's going to cost you to run these middlewares. Not much, but we are trying to save you on the cost. So you're not putting all these enable for your account. And you also have the MQTT broker. If you want to have your own MQTT for your TagoDeploy instance. And by the way, we plan to have a standalone version of the MQTT broker, so you don't have to have a project to deploy your own MQTT. So let me show you how this works. So basically, deploying a service is very easy. You just select your projects. If standalone is available, you don't need to select your projects. But for now, standalone is not available yet. You have the version. You can give it a name and press review and install. And it's going to show you how this is going to cost you. And of course, you have a deployment fee here. And once you have it deployed, let me go back to the project here. So for MQTT, for example, of course, first is going to show up for you in the domains. So for example, the domain page always take a little bit to load. It's loading now, okay.
Yeah, this is on a dev instance that we're showing you here today. Your own instance would be much quicker in this. So
Well, it's not wanting to show you, but basically you are going to have an endpoint here. Have an endpoint for MQTT broker. Of course, if you have a middleware, it's going to show up here as well. And I think it's worth to mention that you are going to manage the endpoint for Tago Run from here as well. So you won't have, can I access the Tago Run? So you would not see the option to manage the domains here in the Tago Run. You are going to enable your Tago Run, and it's going to show up here. And once you add your domain, you can route the domain to that specific Tago Run endpoint. So you can customize all the domains here, but you're going to have your own broker endpoint for testing if you want to do so. And just for the MQTT broker, for example, you also have all the metrics, right? TP utilization, you can scale the MQTT as well. The recommendation is the same for everything that has an API, right? If you are on production, a minimum instance of 2 is the recommended. So you have a fallback instance if one start to give you a problem. And for MQTT, we did invest a lot of time because MQTT is such a kind of feature that each customer wants it differently. So and each customer uses it differently. So you have here all the controls of your instance. You're going to have clients that you can register here for being able to access the instance. You can even have certificates, so you can enable MTLS or just TLS for your MQTT. And by the way, we have already in our community a full tutorial of how you can deploy your MQTT broker and explaining how each one of these different configurations work. So go to our community, announcements, and you're going to see the TagoDeploy MQTT broker service with a video showing how to connect to your TagoIO or your TagoDeploy instance. Okay, so last thing I want to show you is the billing page. By the way, since we are using TagoDeploy, you won't have email, SMS, any of these services from the multi-tenant that is on TagoIO account. So if you want to enable SMS and email for your TagoDeploy admin, you're going to enable from here. For example, I can use SendGrid for email settings and Twilio for SMS settings. And of course, we are going to increase support as we go. So last thing is the billing. So I think this is probably the most important part for some of you. And how you can track your billing. So first, you can see your billing, past billing interactions. You are going to see TagoIO fee here on the bottom. And you're going to see the total charge for this month or the prediction for this month on AWS services. Here you have a grain view of all your costs, how it's spending, how much it's costing, which service is costing you more. And you also can track here daily what had been the cost for this month. I think that covers it all. Did I miss something, David?
Nope, I think you covered it all. Just a couple things to clean up here. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free, but I'm going to share my screen here real quick. I think it's obvious to everybody why TagoDeploy makes sense for certain customers, right? Again, it's not for every customer, right? But it makes sense from a lot of different aspects, giving you the freedom, the security, and just the isolation, right, that you may need. So very powerful. We're very excited about this. Again, if you guys have more questions, you can ask for a demo here. Victor showed you at the top of the webinar of his portion how you can sign up for TagoDeploy. And a couple other things to note. Again, reach out to your CSM if you want more information or a more in-depth demo. But also just something I like to show. This has nothing to do with TagoDeploy. But I like to show this because as a CSM, I speak with so many customers. And when I ask them, do you know that we have dashboard templates? They're like, no, I had no idea. So I like to show this at the end of each webinar. You have these templates here that you can get from your Tago admin. But one thing to point out about these is when you download them to your profile, to your Tago admin profile, you own them. You can do whatever you like with them. So very powerful stuff. But again, contact your CSM with more information. I think that concludes our webinar today. With that, just a couple things here. If you want to learn more, obviously create your Tago deployment. We already talked about that. Join our learning center. Lots of information there. Our community that Victor mentioned, and LinkedIn, we're always posting there new updates and things like that, just on a regular basis. So with that, I really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Victor, and look out for our next webinar and our next events. Just go to our events page and you will see what's coming up next. We do have some more exciting stuff coming in the future, but this was a good one. So with that, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you're at in the world, and we'll see you on the next one.